Every day, the world finds a way to show obese or overweight people that their bodies are not welcome, that their bodies do not fit in the world. That could be about chairs not fitting. It could be about when you go on holiday, you need to have a seatbelt extender. It could also be about kind of the bigger clothing being tucked away in a corner of a shop, or maybe not even available in a shop at all. These kind of things exist. We all know that they happen. However, beyond that, there's also an element of cruelty that those in large bodies have to deal with on a daily basis. Now, throughout my life, I've always been overweight and sometimes really overweight. My current health kit kind of started 8 months ago when I started at my highest weight, which was 620 pounds. I've now lost 175 pounds, which is awesome, but I'm still really conscious I still have a very large body. I personally do not hate myself. I've never hated myself. And the idea of losing weight is about kind of being able to live my life, and particularly about getting my mobility back. However, I have been this weight for kind of quite a lot of my life, so I know what it's like to live in a overweight or obese body, and particularly a body that's especially large, which kind of seems to trigger people even more, and I think results in even more cruelty. So the point of this video is just to share some of the examples I have throughout my life of people being cruel. It's not about people being thoughtless or saying the wrong things, or kind of the way that society is set up, and kind of the way that they do not accept obese people. It's actually about the way that people can attack you if you have a large body. It's about the enjoyment that they sometimes seem to get from kind of making fun or mocking those that live in larger bodies. So these are just a handful of examples that I've picked out because I remember, and I think maybe they will make a good story. So this is way back, kind of in my early 20s. I'm 42 now, so probably about 20 years ago. I was in a club, snogged a guy, pretty standard behaviour. After that had happened, he told me that he'd only done it as a bet, and him and his friends had a bit of a laugh about it. A few years ago, I lived in Amsterdam. I was there for about a year. I was just going about my business one day, going to do a grocery shop. I was in Albert Heijn, which is the big supermarket, and I was going up one side of the aisle. A guy was coming the other side, and he kind of stopped and looked at me and said, "Look at the size of you." And then he went on his business. So there's a few things about that story that always kind of make me laugh, because if you don't laugh, you're going to cry, but it was hideous. Is that he was clearly English. He was British. He talked to me in English. So we were in Amsterdam, where clearly Dutch is the native language. But he kind of felt the need to stop me going about my daily business and make a comment on the size of my body in a language he wasn't aware that I knew. So yeah, that was kind of quite funny. Again, a few years ago, I was living in London at this point. I was on the tube, on the underground. I was going home after work, so it was after rush hour, so a bit quieter in the tube. And in the particular carriage I was in, there was me and then like 2 or 3 people who clearly knew each other and were travelling together, but otherwise it was quite quiet. And kind of we did the majority of the journey, and nothing particularly happened. I was just probably reading my book, and I knew that they were chatting, I could hear, but I wasn't listening. But at some point I became aware that they were talking about me, and one of the guys was calling me a cow. So I think that was about my size, because he and I had not had any interaction, so it wasn't about my personality. And then him and his 2 friends continued to talk about my body and how it would be possible to have sex with me. So that was not about traction or who was attracted to who per se. They were literally talking about the physicality and logistics of having sex with somebody my size. Now, at the time, I was super embarrassed and just kind of got off at the next stop, which happened to be my stop. But when I think back to that, it makes me so angry. Like, F you. Like, what gives you a right to talk about my body? And certainly not in such a graphic way. Numerous times in my life, I've had teenagers film me, and I am aware that they will be sending those videos or pictures to their friends. I'm also super aware that sometimes people upload them to the internet. So whether it was Snapchat back in the day, or kind of whatever glorious invention now there is in which people upload pictures to kind of mock others, that's happened to me kind of dozens of times over the years. And particularly when I've had a bad day and that's happened, I have been paranoid and gone home. And over the next few days, I would have Googled kind of the location I was and kind of words that maybe described me to see if it had been uploaded anywhere. Never actually find it, but it probably just means I'm not on the websites or kind of social media in which people upload videos to kind of mock other people. I have had this happen a number of times, but kind of guys in white vans kind of shout various things like porky, fatty. It's never very funny, it's never very creative, but I just know if I see a white van, it is super likely to happen. And then just kind of my final example, this was a few years ago. I was in Rhyl in North Wales. I'm from North Wales originally, so I was kind of back home for the Christmas and New Year period. I was standing outside the Samaritans waiting to do a volunteer shift. So I was a Samaritan at the time. I was just home, so I was doing volunteering in my local branch rather than the branch where I lived. And for those that don't know, Samaritans is a crisis line. So I was there to kind of listen, gave up some of my time over Christmas to kind of listen to those that maybe needed a listening ear or was suicidal during that period. And I was waiting outside the branch for kind of volunteer to come and open up, and some kids threw McDonald's chips at me. No idea why or what was going on. Not pleasant. I don't think it's pleasant at any time, and it's not okay at any time, but it's also kind of very funny that I was there waiting to do a shift with a crisis hotline, and these kids thought it would be funny to throw chips at me. So those are just some examples. I'm sure if you live in an overweight or obese body, you have your own examples. Feel free to share in the comments. And if you don't, and if you're just seeing this because you kind of live in an average sized body, just be aware of some of the cruelty that does go on. And these are just they're almost funny stories, because if you don't laugh, then you're going to cry. But they're also disgusting. They're mean. They're quite often as well rooted in misogyny. A number of these examples are about men kind of sexualizing me or not sexualizing me, as the point may be, whereas I'm just a woman trying to live my life doing very ordinary things, not at all kind of seeking to be objectified. And so, yeah, misogyny is quite often at the root of many stories I'm sure that particularly women have about being attacked for being overweight or living in a larger body. The final thing that I would say as well, I'm sharing these for information. I'm okay. I survived life. I'm actually perfectly happy in life. You know, my career's good. I'm happy with kind of my relationships. But what it does mean, no matter how well adjusted you are, no matter how resilient you are, every time that you go outside, you have to think, this might happen. Some of these experiences might happen. So you always have to prepare yourself for what could happen. I would say as well, I talked about misogyny, but I would think there's also a lot of overlap in terms of how overweight and obese bodies are treated with others that live in bodies that maybe are not fully accepted by society. So if you have a disability, particularly a visible disability, maybe if you have scars or kind of facial differences, maybe even if you have a trans body, particularly one that doesn't pass, I'm sure you yourself have lots of stories that are not dissimilar to mine. So if you see somebody that has a body, just move on. Everybody has a body. No need to comment. No need to say anything. Just let us be.